Welcome to Nole Edge, the official podcast of the College of Arts and Sciences at Florida State University. I'm your host, Amy Walden, the Assistant Director of Visual and Social Media with the College of Arts and Sciences, and today we welcome members of the class of 2002 to see what these Seminoles have been up to over the last 20 years. We're back in the studio, and I'm joined now by FSU alumnus Joshua Tyler, a lieutenant colonel stationed at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, and the chief of colon and rectal surgery and director of robotic surgery at Merit Health. Josh, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Hi, Amy. Thank you for having me.
At FSU, Josh earned his degree in biology and was also a member of Air Force ROTC before earning his medical degree from the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences in Bethesda, Maryland, which prepares graduates to serve in the military's worldwide medical corps. So Josh, before we dive into what you've been up to since graduation, can you tell us why you wanted to attend FSU and what your college journey was like?
That's a great question. I actually grew up a Tennessee fan. And moved to Florida for 8th grade and high school. And my sister was older than me. And with the Bright Future scholarships, I came from a long line of Tennessee grads and got into Tennessee, but they only offered a small fraction of what Bright Futures afforded. And it's such a great and strong program for students coming out of high school in the state of Florida. So that really followed my sister here, with her being here 2 years ahead of me. Kind of fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the brand, the logo, and everything that FSU represents. And became a Nole fan that day and never looked back.
That's a story we hear time and time again, especially people falling in love with the beautiful trees on campus and things like that. It's absolutely gorgeous here. I agree with you.
I got the best of both worlds, though, because Tennessee won the national title in '98. The last year I was a fan, and we won it in '99, my freshman year. So that worked out.
I'm going to give you credit for that one.
That worked pretty well for me.
Yeah, I think it was all you. So you were very involved on campus during your time at FSU, including being a member of Phi Delta Theta, Air Force ROTC, and student government. Looking back, how did those experiences shape your college experience and who you are today? That's
also a great question. I was relatively shy until maybe my last year of high school. And so as I have a senior graduating now, and I look at, is this too big of a place, or could he really blossom here? Because coming from a relatively soft-spoken student in high school to Florida State, I really blossomed. And I think most of that I attribute to being so involved on campus in many different facets. So what worked for me, Greek system, student government, ROTC, and some other things. But I think every student here has an opportunity to find their niche and find the part of campus, whether that be research, service to others, whatever that looks like. This really is a fertile laboratory to grow student leaders who turn into future leaders and alumni that can give back. So I attribute a lot of my growth to those things. Leadership roles within, and you hear the kind of the recurrence theme of leadership roles. Mm-hmm. So whether I sought those or was encouraged to pursue them by either fraternity brothers or other peers, I think that helped me kind of hone my leadership, my messaging, which has served me well as I've moved forward in my career. So really grateful for the opportunities I had here on campus.
Excellent. Now, can you tell us about what your plans were after graduating from FSU and the career path you ended up taking?
Absolutely. I had just gotten to campus in the summer. We hadn't started fall classes yet. This fall of '99. I'm just strolling through the student union. I grew up in the Top Gun generation. So yes. I actually joined ROTC to be a fighter pilot. And at that time, you could not have corrective eye surgery. So the backup plan was, I guess I'll go to med school and be a doctor.
It's a pretty great backup plan, I must say.
So I wanted to fly, and it was allegedly going to come out a waiver for corrective eye surgery, which did not happen until I had already what we call categorized, where your job is assigned to you for what you do. Mm-hmm. So I knew I was going to be in the military as well as in the medical profession. So that led me to the military's med school. As an aside, I would have been in that very first year of Florida State's med school, which was not yet accredited. So that seemed like a risk to me. It was also in the old Florida High and not the gorgeous campus that we now see where the med school is located. So it just made sense, knowing I was going to be a military physician. It made sense for me to go to the I know it is a mouthful for the name, but everybody just calls it either USIS or the military med school.
Yeah, so, I struggled with that name a little bit on the rehearsal here.
Right. So 4 years in just outside of DC. Then I asked myself, what is the most relevant specialty to someone injured in combat? And to me, that was general surgery and trauma. or orthopedics. Those are kind of our two biggest career fields that are involved in battlefield trauma. So I did that residency at Brooke Army in San Antonio, kind of at the height of Iraq and Afghanistan. So very heavy trauma. We were also a level 1 civilian trauma center. So at some point I kind of got tired of trauma, seeing all the things that I saw during that time. So I decided to be a colorectal surgeon with a passion for robotic surgery, which was just becoming a thing when I was coming out of my fellowship, which is kind of the final year of your subspecialty training. Was fortunate to complete that at Washington University in St. Louis, which is a great institution, but enjoyed my time there in that, many of those students are from the Ivy League. And so when those, what we call attending surgeons, would ask me where I did undergrad and I said Florida State, the conversation was over immediately. They had no interest because we were not well regarded academically among our peer group at that time. And I think all of us can see that narrative has changed greatly with all the hard work that's been done around the university for the U.S. News reports and the increase in rankings and really the value of our degrees for all of us that have a degree from Florida State.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that's such an important message for all of the alumni. So you're the founder and director of both the Air Force's Da Vinci XI program and the Institute for Defense Robotic Surgical Education. Can you explain what these are and how it came to fruition?
Absolutely. So the military health system has some unique challenges. We really balance two distinct missions, one of which is providing care to combat wounded in the deployed environment, which is our predominant mission. However, it's also the smallest percentage of someone's time while they are on active duty. So even though that's our priority, we also have to focus on what are we doing when our physicians, our medical teams overall, the nurses, the techs, when they're stateside and not deployed, how do we keep their skill set polished and with high volume? So essentially, outside of the deployment medicine realm, the military is just a very large hospital corporation at the end of the day. So it's hard to wed those two very differing philosophies and goals and meet in the middle somewhere. So part of that is keeping pace with technology because the military health system very much wants to offer and give outcomes on par with our civilian peer group. So it's really hard to do that if you're not keeping pace with the technology that's being implemented in the private sector. So that was largely the impetus for us to bring the robot to Keesler. I myself have a passion for robot. As I mentioned earlier, I came out of training just as it was being adopted for my specialty. I saw it as the future and embraced it fully, and now travel all over the country speaking and teaching on behalf of robotic surgery for my specialty, which has been a really interesting opportunity, and I love to teach. So that was a big part of why we brought the machine into Keesler. The training site you mentioned, the impetus for that is federal employees have a hard time going to civilian private sector sites because it's considered a gift for government employees. So we decided, well, why not start our own in-house federal government run and administered robotics training site in partnership with the manufacturer. And so we did that and trained over 150 surgeons, nurses, and techs. So 150 times 3 in terms of teams. So made a great impact, both DOD, Department of Defense military surgeons, as well as VA surgeons. So we were proud of what that site accomplished in the 5 years it was open. Due to unique funding environment with the federal government currently, the site's on pause right now, but we're hopeful to bring it back because there is a great need.
And for someone who doesn't really know a lot about robotic surgery, why is something like this so important and special?
It's great. And, many will say in medicine that the anti-robot crowd, because it is a bit contentious for certain specialties, they'll say it's just marketing. And I could not disagree more. When I got to Mississippi is profoundly underserved for many different specialties. When I got there, I was the only colorectal surgeon. And for those who aren't familiar, I do mostly intestinal cancer, Crohn's disease, kind of any intestinal surgery type thing. When I got there to Mississippi, I was the only colorectal surgeon in the state for 4.5 million people.
Oh my gosh. Military
surgeons tend to be very low volume. And so with something in a very narrow field, you need, just like sports or music or woodworking, you've got to have reps to maintain your skill set. So for almost the last 10 years, I've been loaned to off base and have worked in the civilian sector as a volunteer. Those are all uncompensated procedures, but the benefit to me is to give back to the community and keep my skills up as long as I'm still active duty. I commissioned 20 years ago this year, and so that's quite a long time to be in a low volume environment. So that's why that's special to me. But long answer to your question, when I got to Mississippi to do laparoscopic, or people call it keyhole, small incision surgery, usually there's 4 separate trocars. When I was booking these cases initially, the people helping me had never heard of them or seen them. And so with the robot, it has 4 arms that I control all 4. So now I become my own assistant, and I can do more surgery through small incisions as opposed to large, which is generally not as good of an outcome for the patient. So the robot was a tool for me to offer that to more of my patients.
Yeah, I've seen some of those tools in use, and it's really a cool thing to watch.
It's incredible when used correctly.
Yeah.
I will say.
You're a Seminole booster and longtime member of the FSU Alumni Association, where you currently serve on the association's National Board of Directors. Why is this role so important to you?
I've always looked for ways to give back. And I think especially for our young and recent grads, they'll say to themselves, well, I don't have that much money. So what's my, X dollars a year going to do? There are some alumni who are blessed to be able to give of their financial resources, but there are other alumni who may not have those resources but can give of their time, whether that's helping arrange internships for our students, helping mentor. There are all kinds of opportunities, whether you can give money, whether you can give time, whether you can give both, that I think it can almost be overwhelming for our young and recent grads. So my message to all of them is, if you're passionate about the school like many of us are, and the family that we all feel associated with Florida State, just find a way to give back that makes sense for you, whether it be your budget of money or time. And so for me, for years, I never thought I'd live close enough to Tallahassee to contribute meaningfully other than writing a check. So as soon as I got stationed at Keesler, I started looking into the board for the Alumni Association, and it's something that resonated with me. This is my 6th year on the board. I have one more after this. Normally it's 2 3-year terms, but I spent 7 months in Syria and missed the entire year of board meetings. And so they added a year to my term due to my deployment. So I look forward to my last year and a half on the board and have tremendously enjoyed giving back. I try to get to the med school or to the ROTC units, talk to them about military medicine, answer their questions, and just try to give back to a university that gave me so much.
Oh, you just said it perfectly right there. That was great. What advice would you give to current FSU students about their college journey?
That's another really good question. And I touched on it a little bit earlier. Just get involved in whatever aspect of campus resonates with you. You're going to meet new people you might not have ever met otherwise if you kind of stayed in your smaller kind of bubble type groups. So just put yourself out there and then seek leadership opportunities. You'll never believe that the kind of growth that you can make. Being president of my fraternity, suddenly I'm in charge of a large group of young men I can't fine, I can't punish. And so I had to learn how to lead by example to motivate others to do what I needed them to do. And it's one of the toughest leadership jobs I've ever had, but I probably learned the most. So whatever that looks like for students on campus, I'd say get involved and try to stay involved. And in terms of practical advice, we all have goals. Many people who get into this very competitive university are good at goal setting. Now, achieving those goals, I just heard Coach Norvell speak about this a few minutes ago. The achievement, the action is the difference, not just the idea or the words. But I think there's a flaw in that concept in a way, and I learned this in med school when you were studying like you've never studied before, working 80 plus hours a week, which would go higher than that in my residency, is rather than have goals that if you don't hit them, you feel like you have failed, is also set for yourself minimum acceptable standards, whatever that looks like. For me in med school, I had a great mentor that offered this advice, and I continue to pass it on. What's a minimum number of hours you're going to sleep in a night? What is a minimum number of times a week you're going to exercise? What is whatever that looks like? So that way, if you're achieving those minimums, not only are you practicing self-care, which I think is a lesson I learned far too late, and what has been a pretty busy time, post leaving Tallahassee. But you're giving yourself achievable things. And so I think rather than just having these, and it's great to have big dreams and big goals, but let's also be able to celebrate ourselves when we achieve what our kind of minimum standard for ourselves is. I think that's just a different way to frame your mindset, but lets you be on more of a success track in your mind.
Absolutely. Gosh, I'm going to hire you to be my life coach, I think is what I'm learning here. So Josh, we end every podcast with our bowl of mystery questions. Uh-oh. So go ahead and draw a question and answer, please.
Let's see what we got. Oh, if you could take a trip anywhere in the world, where would you go? Probably, I think New Zealand.
Oh,
I'd love to go. I'd love to see it. Never been. That's a long ways.
I hear great things about it.
Yeah, probably New Zealand or Iceland.
Very nice. Yeah. I think both of those are on my list as well.
Yeah.
They seem beautiful. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us today on Nole Edge. And if you would like to learn more about today's guests and the FSU Alumni Association, visit alumni.fsu.edu. We'll catch you next time.